Hey, it's Keith Townsend from the CTOadvisor.com. Apple had a more than a 2-hour keynote at WWDC 2019. Apple normally doesn't have a lot of interesting announcements for the enterprise, but this WWDC was a little bit different. So we'll try to connect the dots for the enterprise watchers. First off, Apple, I think, showed a theme of what's possible, what's the future of edge computing. The iPhone, iPad, and even to a lesser extent, the x86 solutions from the laptops to desktops to all-in-ones show what's possible when it comes to edge computing. iPhones and iPads have been ridiculously overpowered for the typical end user use case. We've thought about and kind of considered some of the edge use cases for these devices, and I think Apple brought through the value of AI and machine learning at the edge, the ability to do video from your home security device, process that video on-prem on one of these devices, and then upload it to iCloud in a secure fashion. Kind of shows how we can do machine learning at the edge and then bring that the results of that to the cloud. Pretty interesting scenario and use case. So as we think through the enterprise and how we use compute at the edge, whether it's VMware vSphere on ARM, and providing services from AI to machine learning inferences at the edge in a controlled manner, or IoT at the edge, Apple is showing from a practical perspective how these technologies can be leveraged. Let's move on to services. One of the most interesting services Apple has introduced, I think, in a really long time is single sign-on. The ability to displace Facebook, Microsoft, Google, all of these single sign-on service providers, with the exception of maybe Microsoft, that get paid to collect our data, and replace them with a single sign-on solution that, again, hopefully we can trust from a privacy perspective. Really interesting solution in which developers can use Apple's single sign-on service inside of their app. The data is obscured from an end user or from a service provider's perspective. A user can choose to give their information from their email address to their first name, last name, and they can choose to give a temporary email address, which Apple will forward all the email going to that address to your inbox, and you can turn it off at any point. Well, that's a great consumer solution. Well, what does that have to do with the enterprise? Apple announced it, but they didn't go into any detail on they will have an enterprise option. So again, a great option for our alternative if you are a Active Directory distractor, you don't like Active Directory. This potentially is at least for authentication, is a solution for authentication, especially across business partners. So as you think about how do I handle identity across different domains, me and my business partners, this is a solution that hopefully a proxy solution that enterprises can trust. Let's move on to hardware. This is again another area that we have not been overly impressed with by Apple in the past with the enterprise. Ever since they got rid of the X server, there hasn't really been a data center story. Obviously, the new Mac Pro, we'll name it the new, I'm sure everyone is already calling it, the cheese grater. The new cheese grater is an amazing machine from a video editor's perspective. Like, all of the video editing features is way overkill for the type of videos that I create, but I was just blown away by the actual device itself. From an enterprise perspective, it can have 4 high-end AMD graphics cards in it with a total of 4 terabits of video of storage of memory bandwidth. I forget the specs from a memory perspective. You put that inside of your data center, what can you do? Well, one, obviously, from a GPU and machine learning perspective, it is a great machine learning GPU machine from a pure specs perspective. But most enterprise customers, I don't foresee that use case. I can see easily someone putting ESXi on these boxes and running VDI or shared high-end compute GPU workstations using virtualization technologies. This is something that's done now with current generation Macs, whether it's the small hockey puck Mac that we use for entry-level devices, or if they're the larger legacy Mac Pros that are tubes that really don't go into racks. You can get this into a rack configuration and alternatively install X server or Mac OS server edition on it and make it a traditional server. I see it being used more as a way to share high-end GPU across infrastructures. I really would be interested to see what the folks at a company like Liquid could do with that many GPUs in that form factor. Really interesting set of announcements from Apple today. What did you think? Did I miss something? Was there something that the enterprise can use? They introduced basically micro-segmentation at the router level for consumer class IoT. I don't know if that's really an enterprise class feature. I can see enterprises teaming with VMware and other SD-WAN solutions that offer micro-segmentation at the WAN. I think it's a great example, but are there any examples from the announcements that I missed that you think, wow, Keith, what I could see some of these Mac OS, iOS features really hitting the enterprise in some significant way? See me online at CTO Advisor is the Twitter handle. TheCTOadvisor.com is the website. You can, of course, follow me on LinkedIn, Keith L. Townsend. Talk to you next, CTO Dose.